Have you ever wondered why a newborn baby, minutes old, can recognize its mother's heartbeat? Why your body knows how to hold someone you love, even though no one ever taught you the exact angle of an embrace? Why you can feel someone's presence in a room before you see them, sense their mood before they speak, know something is wrong even when they say they're fine? Love existed before we had words for it, before we could say I love you, before we could write poetry or sing songs or make promises. For millions of years, our ancestors loved each other without language, without explanation, without the ability to name what they were feeling. And somehow that love was enough. More than enough. It built families, held communities together, passed down through generations, created the long chain of connection that eventually produced you. But here's what makes this so fascinating and perhaps so comforting as you're lying there tonight. The love you feel now, the way your body responds to the people you care about, the physical sensations of affection and attachment and longing, none of that is new. None of it requires words. Your body speaks a language older than speech itself, a language of touch and presence and nervous system synchronization, a language that your ancestors were fluent in for millions of years before the first human ever said, I love you. Tonight, we're going to explore how love worked before language, how early humans and the primates before them and the mammals before them built bonds strong enough to survive anything, how they communicated care without words, formed attachments without promises, created safety through presence alone, how love in its purest form is something your body does, not something your mind understands, and maybe, just maybe, understanding this will help you trust your own wordless ways of loving. The times when you can't find the right words but your presence says everything. The moments when language fails but your body knows exactly what to do. The deep, old knowledge that love is something you are, not something you say. If you're using this to fall asleep, that's exactly why I make these videos. So maybe subscribe and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. I always check the comments and it's fascinating. Tokyo at 3 a.m, Portland at sunset, Berlin in the quiet morning hours. All of us carrying in our bodies the same ancient capacity for wordless love that kept our ancestors alive. So get comfortable, let your breathing deepen. Over the next 2.5 hours, we're going to journey backward through time, before language, before words, before anyone could explain what love was. We're going to watch it work anyway, watch it hold people together, watch it build the foundations of everything human. And we're going to see how that ancient love still lives in you, still speaks through you, still knows how to connect you to others without requiring a single word. Picture this. It's 15 million years ago, somewhere in what will one day be called Africa, in a forest that will eventually shrink and disappear, a mother primate holds her infant. This moment is unremarkable. It happens thousands of times every day across the forest. And yet this moment is everything. This is where love begins, millions of years before anyone will be able to name it. The infant is clinging to her fur with tiny hands. This isn't conscious. The infant's fingers close reflexively around anything they touch, a grip so strong that the baby can hang from a branch if needed, though it won't need to for months. This grasping reflex, this automatic clinging, is older than the species, older than the genus. It's been passed down through so many generations that no one can count them. And it's the foundation of love. Because here's what's happening in that grip. The infant's nervous system is learning what safe feels like, the texture of mother's fur, the rhythm of her breathing, the sound of her heartbeat, the temperature of her body, the smell that means home. All of this information is being encoded, not in language because there is no language, but in the deepest parts of the brain, in regions that will still be there when you're born millions of years later, still doing the same job. The mother isn't thinking about love. She can't. Her brain doesn't have the capacity for that kind of abstract thought, but her body knows what to do. When the infant cries, her stress response activates. When the infant is quiet against her chest, her nervous system calms. She's wired to respond to this small creature, to keep it close, to feel distressed when it's distressed and calm when it's calm. This synchronization, This biological dance between two nervous systems, this is love before language. This is what love actually is. Grow out of all the poetry and promises. Nervous systems talking to each other, bodies regulating each other, presence creating safety, and it works. Watch how it works. When the infant is separated from mother, even just placed a few feet away, watch what happens. The infant's heart rate spikes, its body temperature begins to drop. Stress hormones flood its tiny system. Its breathing becomes rapid and shallow. It cries, a sound designed to travel, to carry through the forest, to activate every adult primate within earshot. And the mother, hearing that cry, experiences her own cascade. Her heart rate increases. Her attention fixes on the infant. Her body prepares to move. She can't ignore this sound any more than you can ignore a fire alarm. It's wired into her. The infant's distress is her distress. This isn't choice. This isn't conscious decision. This is love as a biological imperative. This is what evolution does when it needs individuals to care about each other enough to keep them alive. Now watch what happens when mother picks up the infant. Within seconds, the changes begin. The infant's heart rate drops, its breathing slows and deepens, its body temperature starts to rise, stress hormones decrease. The crying stops, not abruptly but gradually, a wind down that shows the nervous system returning to baseline. And the mother, feeling the infant calm against her chest, experiences her own cascade back to equilibrium. Her heart rate drops, her breathing eases. The stress that flared when she heard the cry dissolves now that the infant is safe. This is love. Not the word and not the concept, but the thing itself. Two nervous systems regulating each other. Two bodies creating safety through proximity. A biological system that works perfectly without anyone understanding how or why. But here's what's crucial. This isn't just about survival, though it is about survival. This isn't just about keeping the infant alive during the months when it can't care for itself, though it does that. This synchronization is doing something else, something deeper. It's teaching the infant what connection feels like. It's encoding in the deepest parts of the brain a map of what safety is. Presence equals regulation equals survival. This equation, learned before language, before memory, before anything we might call consciousness, this will shape every relationship this individual ever has for the rest of its life. You inherited this system. You, lying there right now, you learned this same equation. In the first hours and days and months of your life, your nervous system was learning what safe feels like. The particular rhythm of breathing of the person who held you most. The heartbeat you heard from the inside before you were born. The smell that meant food and comfort and survival. The touch that said, you're not alone. All of this was encoded before you had words, before you could think, before you could remember, in the way you remember things now. And it's still there, still operating. Every relationship you have, every connection you form, every person you love, all of it is built on this foundation that was laid before language. Your body still speaks this old language, still recognizes safety and presence, still regulates through proximity to the people you're bonded to, still knows how to love without words, just as your ancestors did for millions of years. Let's stay in the past a little longer. Let's watch how this wordless love actually worked in the daily lives of creatures who had no way to explain what they were feeling but felt it anyway. The forest is dense. Sunlight filters through the canopy in shifting patterns of green and gold. A small group of primates moves through the trees, not quickly, not with any particular destination. They're foraging, eating leaves and fruit and insects. This is most of their day, every day. Moving and eating and being together. And that last part is crucial, being together. Not because they've made plans, not because they've discussed it, not because someone said we should stay close to each other for safety. They just do. The proximity is automatic, unconscious. When one individual moves, others follow. Not all at once, not in a coordinated way, but gradually. A drift toward a closeness that happens without anyone deciding it should happen. This is love in its most basic form. the preference for nearness, the discomfort of separation, the ease of proximity. No one is saying, "I love you." No one is making promises or declarations. They're just staying together because separation feels wrong and togetherness feels right. Watch what happens when one individual strays too far. Maybe following a particularly appealing food source. Maybe just wandering, attention caught by something. The others notice, not consciously perhaps, but the group's movement begins to shift. Someone moves in the direction of the stray, others follow, and gradually, without anyone leading or planning or discussing, the group pulls itself back together. The one who wandered too far rejoins, and the group continues moving through the forest, intact again. This pulling back together, this elastic boundary that keeps the group from fragmenting, this is love before language. This is attachment working. Each individual is wired to feel better when the group is together and worse when it's not. The nervous system is always monitoring. Where is everyone? How far away are they? Am I within the safe zone? And when someone gets too far, the discomfort builds until movement happens to resolve it. You still do this. You probably don't think about it. But your nervous system is always tracking the people you're bonded to. Where are they? How long since you've seen them? Are they okay? And when the distance gets too great, you feel it. The pull to reconnect, the urge to reach out, the discomfort that builds until contact is made. This isn't neurosis. This isn't clinginess. This is millions of years of evolution teaching your body that separation from your group is dangerous and proximity is safe. Now watch something else. Two adults in the group sitting near each other, not doing anything in particular. One reaches over and begins grooming the other. Not because the other is dirty. The forest isn't particularly dusty. This isn't about hygiene, not primarily. This is about connection. The groomer's fingers move through the other's fur, slow and methodical, parting hair, checking skin and removing any tiny debris. The movements are rhythmic, repetitive, almost meditative. And the one being groomed, watch what happens to their body. Muscles relax, breathing slows, their eyes might close, their posture softens. After a few minutes they might slump against the groomer, nearly asleep. This is love doing its work. The groomer's attention is communicating something wordless but profound. I'm here. I see you. You matter enough to me that I'll spend my time and energy on you. And the one being groomed is receiving that message not in words but in the calming of their nervous system, in the release of tension they didn't know they were holding, in the deep animal comfort of being attended to by someone who cares. And here's what makes this remarkable. After a while they'll switch. The one being groomed will begin grooming the groomer, not because they've agreed to it, not because there's a rule about reciprocity, but because that's how bonding works. Love isn't one-directional. It's not one individual giving and another receiving. It's an exchange, a back and forth, a mutual regulation where both individuals end up calmer and more connected than they started. This grooming, this mutual touch and attention, this is how love was maintained before anyone could say, "I care about you." This is how bonds were reinforced daily, not through words, not through grand gestures, but through small acts of attention, through time spent, through hands that said what mouths couldn't. You're worth my time, my energy, my presence. You still speak this language. You might not groom people, not literally, but you do the equivalent. You make coffee for someone you love. You listen to them talk about their day. You sit next to them on the couch. You put your hand on their shoulder when they're upset. You show up. You pay attention. You spend your limited time and energy on them. And all of this is saying the same thing your primate ancestors said millions of years ago. You matter to me. Your well-being matters to me. I'm bonded to you. And when someone does these things for you, when they show up, when they attend to you, when they spend their limited resources on your well-being, your body understands. Not because they've said, "I love you," though they might. Your body understands because this is the old language. The language your nervous system learned before you could talk. The language that says through action what words can only approximate. I'm here. You're not alone. We're connected. The hours pass. The light shifts. The group finds a place to rest for the night. This isn't random. They've been here before. It's a cluster of trees with branches that interlock in ways that create stable sleeping platforms, safe from ground predators, difficult to fall from even while asleep. The group arranges itself not in neat rows but in a tangle, bodies touching, overlapping, creating a single warm mass in the cooling night air. This isn't just about warmth, though warmth matters. This is about safety, about nervous systems regulating each other through the night, about the presence of others communicating at a subconscious level. Nothing can approach us without one of us noticing. We're watching for each other. You can rest because we're here, and so they rest. Not deeply, not the way you rest in your safe modern bed. Their sleep is lighter, more vigilant, ready to wake at any unusual sound, but it's enough. Enough to restore, enough to prepare for tomorrow. Enough because they're together. This sleeping arrangement, this physical closeness, this is love creating safety in its most literal sense. Your ancestors slept like this for millions of years, tangled together, never truly alone in the darkness. And your body remembers. It's why you sleep better with someone you love next to you. Why their presence calms your nervous system in ways you can't quite explain. Why children feel safer sleeping in their parents' room, and why parents feel something relax when they check on sleeping children. It's not conscious. It's deeper than conscious. It's millions of years of your body learning that sleeping alone is dangerous and sleeping together is safe. Now let's move forward in time. Not all the way to humans yet, but closer. Let's visit your ancestors 3 million years ago. They're no longer primarily tree-dwelling. They spend most of their time on the ground now, in small groups, in the African grasslands where forests are shrinking and open spaces are expanding. And in this new environment, the old ways of bonding are becoming even more crucial, because the dangers have changed, the predators have changed, and survival increasingly depends on how well the group can stay together and care for each other. Picture a small band, maybe 20 individuals, moving across the savannah in the early morning. They're walking upright now, hands free to carry things, to gesture, to reach out. The infants aren't clinging to fur anymore. Mothers carry them, arms wrapped around small bodies. This is new, this carrying. It requires more energy than having an infant cling to you, but it also creates something, creates a different kind of connection. Because carrying is active, carrying is choosing over and over to keep this small body close, to bear its weight, to prioritize its safety even when it's heavy and your arms are tired. And the infant carried is learning something too, learning that love means effort, that someone's willingness to keep carrying you even when it's hard, that's a message, not in words. The infant doesn't have words, but the body understands that this is what mattering feels like. Being carried when you can't walk, being held when you can't hold yourself up, being kept close even when closeness is costly. This carrying, this new way of transporting infants, it changed something fundamental about bonding. Because in the old way, with the infant clinging, the mother could do other things. Climb trees, use both hands. The infant was attached but not occupying her full attention. But now, carrying an infant means sacrificing the use of your arms, means prioritizing that infant over other activities, means making a choice over and over that this relationship matters more than immediate personal convenience. And that choice, repeated thousands of times as the infant grows, that's creating attachment. That's teaching both mother and infant something about the costs of love, about what we're willing to bear for each other. And it's preparing the way for human love, which will be even more demanding, even more costly, even more clearly a choice made repeatedly despite difficulty. Watch what happens when this group encounters danger. Maybe the distant shape of a predator. Maybe the sound of something large moving through tall grass. Immediately the group contracts. Adults move closer together. Mothers grip infants more tightly. The young who can walk are herded toward the center, and everyone faces outward, scanning vigilant, creating a protective barrier around the most vulnerable members. This is love as protection, not romantic, not sentimental, but profound. Each adult is accepting increased risk to themselves by staying with the group. They could run, scatter, increase their individual chances of escape, but they don't. They stay. They form the barrier. They put themselves between danger and the young. No one is thinking, I love these individuals, so I'll protect them. They're not thinking at all, not in language. They're responding to something deeper than thought. A biological imperative that says, my group's survival is my survival. These children are my genetic future. This bond is more important than my immediate comfort or even my immediate safety. You inherited this response. When you see a child in danger, any child, even a stranger's child, something in you reacts. Your body prepares to intervene, to put yourself between the child and the threat. This isn't learned. You didn't study this. It's written into your nervous system. The willingness to protect the vulnerable at cost to yourself, that's love before language. That's millions of years of evolution programming you to care about others in your group, because groups that cared about their vulnerable members survived, and groups that didn't vanished. The danger passes, or maybe it was never real, just a shadow that looked like a threat. The group relaxes, but slowly, gradually. First one individual resumes foraging, then another. The children move back out to the edges of the group. The mothers loosen their grip on infants, and life continues. But the memory of that moment stays in the body, the way the group pulled together, the way protection was automatic, the way love showed up not as words, but as action, immediate and unquestioned. This is what love looked like before language. Not poetry, not declarations, just presence, just staying, just the body doing what evolution programmed it to do. Bond, protect, regulate, care. Let's look at one more moment before we move to our next section. Because there's something else that happened in these early groups, something that will become crucial as we approach humanity. An infant dies. This happens sometimes. Illness, accident, predation. The reasons vary, but the result is the same. A small body that was alive is now still, and the mother holding this small still body doesn't let go. Not immediately. Maybe not for hours. Maybe, in some cases, for days. This seems like it should be simple. The infant is dead. There's no evolutionary reason to keep holding it. It's not coming back. Carrying a dead infant is energetically expensive and serves no reproductive purpose. The logical thing would be to let go and move on, but she doesn't let go. She keeps carrying, keeps trying to get the infant to respond, keeps grooming it, keeps holding it close. And the other members of the group, they respond too. They approach, they touch, they sit nearby. Not doing anything exactly, just being present with this grief that has no name, because naming requires language and language doesn't exist yet. This is love confronting loss, and it's doing something remarkable. It's creating the foundation for grief, for mourning, for the specifically human capacity to be undone by loss. Because that capacity isn't new, isn't unique to humans, it's older than humanity. It's what happens when you have nervous systems wired to bond so strongly that separation activates the same circuits as physical pain. The mother's body is processing the death of her infant the way it would process a physical injury. Because to her nervous system this is an injury. The absence of this small body that should be present is registering as wrong, as dangerous, as something that needs to be fixed. And her attempts to carry the infant, to revive it, to maintain the bond, these aren't irrational. They're her attachment system trying to resolve an unresolvable problem, trying to fix something that can't be fixed. And the group's response, their gathering around her, their touches, their presence, this is love offering what little comfort it can. Not understanding what's happening, not able to explain or process or make meaning. Just being there, just touching, just staying. This is what love does before language. Before anyone can say, I'm sorry for your loss or I'm here for you, love shows up in presence, in touch, in staying nearby when someone is in pain even though you can't fix it. You inherited this capacity too, to be undone by loss, to feel the absence of someone you loved as a physical pain, to want to stay near them even when they're gone, to need the presence of others when you're grieving, even when they can't say or do anything to make it better. This grief, this specifically human way of breaking when bonds are severed, it's not a flaw. It's the cost of loving. It's what happens when you have a nervous system capable of bonding deeply enough to keep you alive for millions of years. The pain of loss is the price of the bond, and your ancestors paid that price over and over for your entire evolutionary history. As you're lying there tonight, perhaps you can feel it. The ancient capacity for wordless love that's built into your body. The way your nervous system still speaks the old language. Still knows how to bond through presence, through touch, through attention, through staying. Before any words, before any promises, before any explanation. Just bodies knowing how to care for each other. Just nervous systems learning to regulate each other. Just the old equation, repeated for millions of years. Proximity equals safety equals love. We're just beginning this journey. We've only touched the earliest foundations, the primate roots of love before language, but already you can see how deep this goes, how old it is, how your body carries knowledge that predates words by millions of years. In the next part, we'll move forward in time. We'll watch as these early bonds become more complex, as the stakes get higher, as groups get larger and more sophisticated, as love begins to do new things, solve new problems, create new connections. But always, always without words, because words haven't been invented yet, and love doesn't need them. It never has. So stay with me. Let your breathing deepen. Let your body rest against the surface beneath you, the way your ancestors rested against each other for millions of years. The story of love before language is long, and we've only just begun. To understand what love actually does, we need to go back even further than we've been. Because love isn't one thing. It's not a single emotion that appeared at a single point in evolution. It's a collection of systems, each evolved at different times, for different purposes, solving different survival problems, and all of them working together, without words, without consciousness, without anyone understanding what was happening. Just bodies learning to need each other in ways that kept them alive. Let's start with the oldest form of love, the one that predates primates, predates most mammals, predates almost everything we might recognize as similar to ourselves. Let's start with maternal care, because this is where it all begins. This is the foundation on which every other form of love is built. Picture an early mammal, maybe 200 million years ago, not primate, not even close to primate, something small and quick and mostly nocturnal. This creature has just done something revolutionary in evolutionary terms. Instead of laying eggs and leaving them to develop on their own, instead of producing offspring that must fend for themselves from the moment they hatch, this creature's young develop inside the mother's body. They're born alive but helpless, completely dependent. And this creates a problem that evolution has to solve. These helpless young will die without care, without someone feeding them, warming them, protecting them, and that someone has to be willing to pay enormous costs. Energy costs, time costs, risk costs. The mother has to invest in these offspring for weeks or months, sacrificing her own feeding, her own safety, her own survival chances, for creatures that give nothing back except the possibility that they'll survive to reproduce. So evolution builds a system, builds it into the mother's brain, into her hormones, into her nervous system, makes her body respond to these helpless creatures in ways that override her own immediate interests, makes the sound of their distress activate her stress response, makes their presence calm her, makes their absence agitate her, makes caring for them feel not like sacrifice but like necessity. This is the first love, not romantic, not chosen, not based on any qualities of the individuals involved. Just a biological imperative. A hardwired response that says, this creature's survival matters more than your comfort, more than your convenience, sometimes more than your own survival. And it works. The mothers who have this response most strongly, whose nervous systems most reliably prioritize offspring over self, they leave more surviving offspring, and those offspring inherit the tendency. Generation after generation, natural selection strengthens this bond, makes it more powerful, more reliable, more capable of overriding everything else. Fast forward now, not all the way to humans yet, but forward through millions of years of mammal evolution. Watch how this maternal bond becomes more sophisticated, more nuanced, more capable of adapting to different situations. In some species, mothers recognize their own offspring by smell. A lamb can be lost in a flock of thousands, and its mother will find it by scent alone. This isn't learned. The mother never studied her lamb's unique odor. Her brain is just built to encode it automatically, to create a template in the first hours after birth that says, "This smell is mine. Protect it." In other species, it's sound. A mother elephant can distinguish her calf's call from dozens of others, across distances of miles. A human mother can identify her infant's cry from a nursery full of crying babies, not because she's learnt the acoustic signature, because her brain has been listening since before birth, tuning itself to this particular frequency, creating a filter that makes this sound stand out from all other sounds. And in primates, in your ancestors, it was more complex still. Smell and sound, yes, but also touch, the specific feel of this infant's skin, the particular way it moves, the rhythm of its breathing, the weight of it in the arms. All of this information being integrated, creating a complete picture of this individual that the mother's brain knows without anyone teaching it. This recognition, this ability to identify your own offspring from all others, this is love doing specialized work. Because maternal care is expensive, evolution can't afford to have mothers caring for random offspring. Resources are limited. Energy is scarce. The system has to be specific, has to direct care toward genetic relatives, has to create bonds that are discriminating, even though there are no words to explain who belongs to whom. And here's what's remarkable. This recognition system, this template-making capacity, it's still in you. You didn't evolve to have children in hospital nurseries full of identical pink bundles. You evolved to give birth in small groups where your infant was the only newborn, or one of very few, but your brain still does what it was designed to do, still creates that own template, still encodes the specific sensory signature of your child, still makes that child smell, sound, touch, different from all others, special, yours. And if you don't have children, your brain applies this same system to others you bond with. Romantic partners, close friends, anyone you're deeply attached to. Your brain is using the same ancient template-making machinery, originally designed for maternal recognition, to encode the specific sensory details of the people you love, to make them distinctive, to make their presence something your nervous system recognizes automatically, without conscious thought, without words. Now let's look at a different kind of love, one that emerged later in evolutionary time, solving a different problem. Picture a species where infants develop slowly, where they need care not just for weeks or months, but for years, where a single parent can't provide everything an infant needs to survive. Food, protection, warmth, teaching is too much for one individual. The energetic costs are too high. Infant survival rates plummet when mothers are alone. So evolution tries something, tries involving fathers in care, tries creating a bond between male and female that keeps them together long enough to raise offspring to independence. This is pair bonding. And it's a different kind of love than maternal care. Uses some of the same neural machinery, yes, but serves a different purpose and solves a different problem. Pair bonding has to do something maternal care doesn't. It has to create attachment between individuals who aren't genetically programmed to care about each other. Mother and infant, that bond is automatic. Built in, mothers are wired to care for their offspring, but male and female, there's no automatic bond there. No inherent reason for them to stay together once mating is accomplished. So evolution builds one, builds it carefully, using the same reward systems that drive eating and drinking and other survival behaviors. Makes proximity to this particular individual feel good, makes their absence feel bad, creates a preference for nearness that grows stronger over time, uses oxytocin, the same hormone that bonds mother to infant, to bond male to female, makes the nervous system synchronize, makes each individual calmer in the other's presence and more stressed in their absence. This is love as partnership, not based on offspring, though offspring benefit from it, based on mutual regulation. On two nervous systems learning to need each other, learning that together feels better than apart, learning to function as a unit rather than as separate individuals. And here's what makes this fascinating. This pair bonding system, when it evolved, it didn't have language to work with. Partners couldn't discuss their commitment, couldn't make promises or plans, couldn't explain why they were staying together. They just stayed, because their bodies rewarded proximity and punished separation. Because being together felt right in a way that being apart didn't. You inherited this system, this capacity for pair bonding, this ability to become attached to a romantic partner in ways that use the same neural circuits as maternal bonding. And when it works, when you find someone whose nervous system synchronizes with yours, whose presence calms you and whose absence unsettles you, that's not a conscious choice you're making. That's millions of years of evolution doing what it evolved to do, creating bonds strong enough to keep partners together, long enough to raise helpless human infants to independence. But here's the thing about pair bonding in species that had it befall a language. It was mediated through behavior, through action, through presence and attention and mutual care. You couldn't say I'm committed to you. You couldn't make promises about the future. You could only show up day after day, stay close, share resources, offer comfort when your partner was distressed, accept comfort when you were distressed. Let your actions demonstrate what your words couldn't express. I'm here, I'm staying, you matter to me. This is still how love works best, even now that you have language. Words are important, certainly, but your nervous system trusts actions more than promises, trusts presence more than statements, trusts what someone does more than what they say, because your body is still speaking the old language, still evaluating bonds the way your ancestors did for millions of years. Does this person show up? Do they stay close? Do they offer care? Do they respond when I'm distressed? Words can lie. Actions are harder to fake. And your ancient bonding systems know this. Now let's look at a third kind of love, one that doesn't get talked about as much, but might be the most important of all for understanding what makes us human. Friendship, not between mother and infant, not between mating partners, but between individuals who aren't related and aren't mating but form bonds anyway. Deep bonds, lasting bonds. Bonds that sometimes matter more than family bonds or romantic bonds. Picture a primate group 5 million years ago, not mother and infant, not a mated pair, just two adult females who've been together since they were young. They sit near each other most of the time, groom each other daily, move through the forest in proximity, share food occasionally, intervene when the other is threatened. Their lives are intertwined in ways that aren't about reproduction, aren't about offspring, aren't about any obvious survival benefit. This is friendship before language, and for a long time scientists weren't sure what to make of it. What's the evolutionary purpose? Why would natural selection favour spending time and energy on someone who isn't your offspring or your mate? What's the benefit? But watch what happens when one of them is stressed. Maybe a conflict with another group member. Maybe an encounter with a predator. Maybe just hunger or exhaustion or pain. Watch how the other responds. Immediately there, immediately attentive, sitting close, touching. The friend's presence doesn't solve the problem, doesn't eliminate the stressor, but it changes how the stressed individual's body responds to it. Cortisol levels drop, heart rate decreases, breathing slows. The stress response doesn't disappear entirely, but it moderates, becomes manageable. The friend's presence is literally changing the stressed individual's physiology, acting as an external regulator, helping maintain equilibrium in situations that would otherwise overwhelm the system. This is what friendship does. It's not about reproduction, it's about regulation, about having someone who can help your nervous system stay balanced when life gets hard. And in a harsh environment where stress is constant and resources are scarce and danger is everywhere, having someone who can regulate you, who can calm your system through presence alone, that's an enormous survival advantage. And there's more. Friends share information, not verbally because there are no words, but through attention, through what they pay attention to, where they look, what they approach or avoid. If one friend discovers a new food source, the other watches, learns, adopts the same behaviour. If one friend shows fear of a new situation, the other becomes cautious too. Friendship creates channels for social learning, for spreading innovations, for building culture. Even before anyone could name what culture was, you still do this. You still bond with people who aren't romantic partners or family members, still form friendships that matter deeply, that shape your life, that sometimes outlast romantic relationships or family connections. And those friendships still work the way they did 5 million years ago. They regulate you, they share information, they create the social network that helps you navigate a complex world. And just like ancient friendships, modern ones are maintained through behaviour, not words. You can say you're my friend all you want, but friendship is built through showing up, through being there when someone needs you, through the daily or weekly or monthly repetitions of contact and attention and care, through actions that demonstrate your well-being matters to me. I'll invest my limited time and energy in this connection. I choose this bond. There's one more type of love we need to explore before we move forward in time, one that operated at a different scale than the others. Group cohesion, the love that held together bands of individuals who weren't all related, weren't all friends, but needed to function as a unit to survive. Picture a group of 30 individuals 2 million years ago moving across the African savanna. This group includes multiple family units, several pairs with their offspring, some single adults, some elderly individuals who no longer reproduce but haven't died yet. All of them together day after day, year after year, maintaining proximity despite differences, despite conflicts, despite the stress of constant closeness. This group cohesion is a different kind of love than what we've discussed so far. It's more diffuse, less intense, not the fierce bond of mother to infant or the intimate connection of friendship, but still love, still a system that makes individuals tolerate each other, care about each other's welfare, stay together even when staying together is difficult. And this kind of love had to solve problems the others didn't. Maternal love is automatic, built into biology. Pair bonding happens between two individuals and benefits from mutual reward. Friendship forms between individuals who choose each other. But group cohesion has to work across dozens of individuals who don't all choose each other, who sometimes actively dislike each other, who compete for resources and status and mates. So how do you create bonds strong enough to hold together a group of individuals with conflicting interests? How do you make people care about strangers within their band? Evolution found several solutions. One was familiarity. The simple fact of being around the same individuals repeatedly creates a baseline preference for them. Your nervous system learns their patterns, becomes familiar with their presence, starts to expect them to be there. And when they're not, you notice, feel slightly off. Your brain has encoded them as part of the normal environment, and their absence registers as wrong even if you never particularly liked them. Another solution was interdependence, making the group's survival benefit each individual so clearly that abandoning the group would be stupid. Cooperative hunting increases everyone's food intake. Shared vigilance reduces everyone's predation risk. Division of labour allows specialisation that makes the whole group more effective. Love isn't needed to maintain these benefits exactly, but evolution strengthens the bonds anyway, makes people feel positively about their group members, because positive feelings make cooperation easier. A third solution was empathy, the capacity to feel distressed when seeing another's distress. This seems inefficient at first. Why should I care if someone I barely like is suffering? Why should their pain activate my stress response? But it works. It works because empathy motivates helping. And in a small group where everyone depends on everyone else, helping maintains the bonds that keep the group functional. Empathy without words. Just the automatic activation of care when you see suffering. The inability to ignore another's pain because it becomes your pain. You inherited all of this. Your capacity to feel connected to groups you're part of, even when you don't know everyone well. Your tendency to care about the well-being of people in your community, even strangers. Your distress when you see suffering, even when it's not your suffering. This isn't learned. This isn't cultural conditioning. This is millions of years of evolution building systems that make you care about your group's welfare. Because for most of human history, your group's welfare was your welfare. And all of this, all of these different types of love, maternal bonds, pair bonds, friendships, group cohesion, all of it existed before language. Before anyone could name what they were feeling or explain why they stayed close or promised to love someone forever. It just worked. Bodies needing each other. Nervous systems regulating each other. Proximity creating safety. Bonds forming through action and presence and time spent together. Let's look now at how these different forms of love interacted in a single community. Because they didn't exist in isolation. Each individual wasn't experiencing just one type. They were experiencing several simultaneously, creating a complex web of connections that held the community together in ways that would be impossible to explain, but were easy to live. Picture a female primate, maybe 3 million years ago. She has an infant clinging to her back. That's maternal love, fierce and automatic. She has a male partner who's been with her for years, who helps protect the infant, who shares food with her, who sits close to her in the evening. That's pair bonding, not as intense as her bond with the infant, but strong and steady and reliable. She has a female friend she grew up with, someone she grooms daily, someone whose presence calms her when she's stressed. That's friendship, chosen and maintained through years of proximity and mutual care. And she has the group, the larger band she travels with, individuals she might not be particularly close to, but who she recognizes, who she expects to see, who she'd notice if they disappeared. That's group cohesion, the loose but real bonds that create community. And all of these loves are working together, creating layers of security. If her infant is threatened, all 3 levels activate. She responds as mother, her partner responds as co-parent, her friend often responds too, because the friend has known this infant since birth and has a bond with it, weaker than the mother's but real. And the group responds because an infant's distress is everyone's concern. The cry of a baby in danger activates every adult in the band. Multiple forms of love converging on a single problem, creating redundancy, ensuring that someone will respond even if the mother can't. This layering is crucial. It means that individuals aren't dependent on a single bond for survival. Maternal love is strongest, but if the mother dies, the infant might survive through the care of others. Pair bonds matter, but if one partner dies or leaves, the other still has friends, still has the group, still has connections that provide support and regulation. The web of love is redundant, overlapping, creating a safety net that catches people when their individual bonds fail. You live in this same web. You might not think about it this way, but you're held by multiple types of bonds right now. Your family, whatever form that takes. Your romantic relationships, if you have them. Your friendships. Your broader community, the people you recognize and interact with regularly, even if they're not close friends. And when something goes wrong, when you're struggling, these different bonds activate at different intensities. Close friends respond strongly. Family responds. The broader community might respond more weakly, but they respond. And all of it together creates the support that helps you survive hard times. This web was built before language, before anyone could explain the different types of bonds or distinguish between family love and romantic love and friendship. It just existed. Just worked, just held people together in ways that kept them alive long enough to reproduce and raise the next generation who would build the same web and pass it forward. Now let's look at one more aspect of wordless love before we move to our next section, something that will become crucial as we approach humanity, the capacity for love to grow stronger through shared hardship. Picture 2 individuals who've survived something difficult together, maybe a dangerous hunting expedition, maybe a period of severe food scarcity, maybe an attack by predators where they protected each other. They didn't have words to process what happened, couldn't talk it through or share their feelings or bond through storytelling. But something changed between them anyway. After the hardship, they're closer. They seek each other out more, sit nearer, groom more frequently. The bond has intensified. This happens because shared stress creates synchronization. When two individuals go through the same difficult experience simultaneously, their nervous systems activate in similar ways. Similar cortisol patterns, similar adrenaline surges, similar fear responses. And when they regulate each other through that stress, when one's presence helps the other's system return to baseline, something gets encoded, not as memory in the way you remember things consciously, but as a deep neural association. This person helps me survive hard things. This bond matters. This is why trauma bonding is so powerful. Why soldiers who've been in combat together form connections that last lifetimes. Why people who've survived disasters together often become intensely close. Why shared hardship strengthens relationships in ways that shared pleasure can't quite match. Your nervous system is doing what it evolved to do, strengthening the bonds that proved useful under stress, marking certain people as essential to your survival, creating loyalty that runs deeper than conscious choice. And this happened millions of years before anyone could say, "We've been through a lot together," or "I'll always remember what you did for me." The bodies remembered. The nervous systems encoded the experience. The bond strengthened. And that was enough. You still do this. When you go through something difficult with someone, when they're there for you during a crisis, when you survive something hard together, the bond changes, deepens, becomes more resilient. Not because you've discussed it or made promises, because your body has learned at a fundamental level. This person matters. This connection helps me survive. This bond is worth maintaining. As you're lying there tonight, perhaps you can feel how complex love really is. Not one simple emotion, not one clear feeling, but a collection of systems, each evolved at different times, for different purposes, all working together without words, without explanation, without anyone needing to understand how or why. Just bodies learning to need each other, just nervous systems learning to regulate each other. Just the old, deep knowledge that survival depends on connection, and connection happens through presence, through action, through time spent together. We've covered a lot of ground, from the earliest maternal bonds to pair bonding to friendship to group cohesion to trauma bonding. All of it wordless, all of it working perfectly well without anyone being able to name what they were feeling or explain why these bonds mattered. In the next section, we'll move closer to humanity. We'll watch as these basic forms of love become more sophisticated, as groups get larger and more complex, as the need for love to solve new problems drives the evolution of new capacities. But always the foundation remains the same. Love is what bodies do to stay connected. And words, when they finally arrive, will only describe what was already there. So settle deeper. Let your breathing slow, and the night is long, the story is far from over, and every word of it is written in your body waiting to be remembered. As this evolved, something else was happening, something that would change everything about how love works. These bonds we have been exploring, maternal care, pair bonding, friendship, group cohesion, they were all functional. They all served clear survival purposes. Mothers who bonded with infants raised more surviving offspring. Partners who stayed together raised healthier children. Friends who regulated each other survived stress better. Groups that cohered outcompeted groups that didn't. But at some point, love started doing things that went beyond obvious survival benefits. Started creating connections that seemed, from a strictly evolutionary perspective, inefficient, costly, sometimes actively dangerous to the individuals involved, and yet these patterns persisted, strengthened, became part of what it meant to be our kind of animal. Let's look at some of these patterns, because they'll help us understand something crucial about human love, about why you're capable of loving in ways that don't make logical sense, that don't serve your immediate interests, that sometimes come at enormous cost. This capacity isn't new, it's ancient, and it was all happening before anyone had words to justify or explain or rationalize what they were doing. Picture a mother primate who has lost her infant. We talked about this briefly before, but let's look at it more closely now, because something remarkable sometimes happens after a mother loses her infant. Sometimes she'll adopt another's infant, not her own genetic offspring. An infant who belongs to another female, maybe one who died, maybe one who rejected her baby, maybe one who had twins and couldn't care for both. This adoption, this willingness to invest in an infant who shares none of your genes, this seems like it shouldn't work. Natural selection should favour mothers who invest only in their own offspring, who don't waste resources on others' children. And yet adoption happens, across many species, across millions of years. It's not common, but it's not rare either. And it persists. Why? What's happening here? One explanation is simple mistakes. The mother's bonding system has been activated by losing her infant. Her body is flooded with maternal hormones, prepared to care for a baby. When she encounters an orphaned infant, her system doesn't distinguish, doesn't calculate genetic relationship, just responds to the stimulus. Baby in distress. Care system activates, she bonds. But that's not the whole story, because sometimes the adoption happens even when the mother can clearly tell this isn't her infant. Different size, different smell, different sound. Her recognition systems are working fine. She knows this isn't her baby, and she cares for it anyway. This is love doing something evolution might not have directly selected for, but can't eliminate. Because the bonding systems are so powerful, so reliable, so crucial for survival, that they sometimes activate beyond their primary function. They spill over. They create connections that don't serve immediate genetic interests, but emerge as a byproduct of systems that are too important to constrain too narrowly. And here's what this tells us about your capacity for love. You're capable of bonding with individuals who aren't genetically related to you, capable of caring deeply about adopted children, stepchildren, students, mentees, people you choose to invest in, even though evolution didn't program you to prioritize them. This capacity is ancient. It's been with your lineage for millions of years. It's what allows human love to be more than just genetic calculation, more than just reproduction, more than just survival. Now let's look at something even stranger, something that seems to make even less evolutionary sense. Cross-species care, instances where one species adopts or protects the young of another species. This happens more often than you might think. Dogs nursing kittens, cats caring for ducklings, primates adopting puppies, elephants protecting rhinoceros calves. These aren't isolated anomalies. They're documented across many species, across many contexts, across long periods of time, and this really shouldn't work. Caring for another species' offspring provides zero genetic benefit, uses resources that could go to your own offspring, sometimes puts you at risk if the adopted infant grows large or dangerous. By any strict evolutionary accounting, this is wasteful behavior that should be eliminated by natural selection. But it persists, because the bonding systems, once they're activated, don't necessarily distinguish species. They respond to cues, infant in distress, sounds of crying, appearance of vulnerability, behavioral signals of need. When these cues are present, the care system activates. Even if the infant isn't your species, even if caring for it serves no reproductive purpose. This is important for understanding human love, because you're capable of bonding with animals, with pets who aren't even the same species, who can never reciprocate in the ways another human could, who don't contribute to your genetic success, and yet you love them, bond with them, grieve when they die. Your ancient bonding systems are activated by their presence, their need, their distress. And once activated, those systems create real attachment, real love, not diminished by being cross-species, just as powerful, sometimes more powerful, than bonds with other humans. This capacity to love beyond genetic self-interest, beyond species boundaries, beyond rational calculation, it's not a modern development. It's not cultural conditioning or sentimentality. It's millions of years old. It's what happens when evolution builds bonding systems so powerful they can't be perfectly constrained to their original purpose. Let's look now at another pattern, alloparenting. The care of offspring by individuals who aren't the biological parents. This is different from adoption. The biological mother is still present, still primary caregiver. But others help. Aunts, older siblings, friends, even unrelated females in the group. All contributing care to infants who aren't their genetic offspring. This happens extensively in primates. In some species, infants are passed around the group, held and carried and groomed by multiple individuals. The mother doesn't object. She allows it, seems to expect it, and the other caregivers aren't being forced. They seek out opportunities to hold infants, compete for access to them, invest time and energy in caring for them. What's happening here? Why would individuals care for offspring who aren't their own? Several forces are at work. One is practice. Young females who care for others' infants are learning how to be mothers, building the neural pathways that will make maternal care easier when they have their own offspring. This has clear evolutionary benefit, even if the immediate costs seem high. Another is reciprocity. If I help care for your infant now, you might help care for mine later. This creates a network of mutual support that benefits everyone over time. A third is kin selection. Many group members are related. Helping your sister's infant or your cousin's infant still serves your genetic interests, even if the benefit is diluted compared to helping your own offspring. But there's a fourth force too. One that's harder to quantify but might be the most important. The emotional reward of caring. The way holding an infant calms your nervous system. The way being trusted with another's baby creates social bonds. The way contributing to infant care makes you feel more integrated into the group. These aren't abstract benefits. They're felt. Even without language, without conscious understanding, the body knows. Caring for infants feels good, creates connection, makes you matter. And this is still with you. Your desire to hold babies, even strangers' babies. Your attraction to infants. Your tendency to smile at them, talk to them in special voices, orient your attention toward them. This isn't learned behavior you can easily override. It's deep neural programming that says, infants are important. Infants should be protected. Contributing to infant care matters. This is why child-free individuals still often feel drawn to children. Why people volunteer in schools or coach youth sports or mentor young people. Why seeing a child in distress activates your care response even if you never want children of your own. The alloparenting instinct is wired into you. It's been part of your lineage's survival strategy for millions of years, and it still shapes how you respond to the young, even in a world where you can choose not to reproduce. Now let's talk about something that confused scientists for a long time. Altruism. The willingness to help others at cost to yourself. This shows up in many contexts, but let's focus on one particularly striking example. Picture a primate group encountering a predator. Most individuals flee, but one, sometimes more than one, doesn't flee immediately. Instead, they give an alarm call, a loud vocalization that alerts the group to danger. This seems helpful, and it is. The alarm call allows others to escape more quickly, increases group survival. But here's the problem. The individual giving the alarm call is putting themselves at enormous risk. They're making noise that draws the predator's attention. They're delaying their own escape to warn others. They're accepting increased personal danger to benefit the group, and if they're killed, they leave no offspring. Their altruistic genes are eliminated from the population. So why does alarm calling persist? Why hasn't natural selection eliminated this behavior? Several mechanisms are involved. Kin selection matters. If you save 3 siblings by giving an alarm call, even if you die, you've preserved more of your genes than if you had stayed silent and only saved yourself. Reciprocal altruism matters. If I risk myself to save the group today, others might risk themselves to save me tomorrow. Group selection might matter. Groups with alarm callers survive better than groups without them, even if the individual alarm callers pay costs. But there's something else happening too. Something about the social bonds created by altruistic acts. When you risk yourself for others, when you pay cost to benefit the group, you're not just performing a calculation about genetic payoffs, you're creating relationships. You're demonstrating that you value the group's welfare, you're building trust. And in a species where survival depends on cooperation, where group cohesion determines success, being known as someone who helps, who contributes, who can be counted on, that has value beyond immediate genetic calculus. And all of this is happening without words. The alarm caller isn't thinking, I'll risk myself now to build social capital. They were just doing what their body is programmed to do when danger threatens. Warn the group. And the group members who survive because of that warning, they're not consciously calculating that they owe the caller something. They're just responding the way their bodies are programmed to respond. Remember who helped you. Form stronger bonds with reliable allies. Trust those who've demonstrated care for the group. This is wordless reciprocity, wordless gratitude, wordless love expressed through risk-taking on behalf of others. And it's still with you. Your willingness to help strangers even at cost to yourself. Your tendency to remember who's been there for you when you needed help. Your trust of people who've demonstrated they care about more than just their own interests. This isn't modern morality, this isn't cultural conditioning, this is millions of years of evolution teaching your body that caring about others' welfare creates the bonds that keep groups functional. Let's shift now to something that will bring us closer to understanding uniquely human love. The capacity for long-term memory of relationships. Most animals have some relationship memory. They recognize individuals they've interacted with before. They remember who's been aggressive, who's been friendly, who's been a reliable partner. But the time span of this memory is limited. Days, maybe weeks, rarely months. But in primates, and especially in your ancestors, something changed. Relationship memories started lasting longer. Months, years, sometimes lifetimes. An individual could remember a friend from years ago, could maintain a bond with someone they hadn't seen in seasons, could hold grudges, or maintain alliances across long periods of separation. This long-term relationship memory changed everything about how love could work, because now bonds didn't require constant proximity to maintain. You could separate from someone you cared about and the bond would persist. You could reunite after long absences and pick up where you left off. The relationship existed not just in immediate interaction, but in memory, in expectation, in the ongoing mental model of who mattered to you. Watch what happens when two friends who haven't seen each other for months reunite. The recognition is immediate. The greeting is intense, extended. More elaborate than daily greetings between individuals who see each other constantly. There's something being expressed here. Something like, I remember you, you still matter to me. Our bond persisted during the separation. This capacity for persistent bonds across time and distance, this is crucial for understanding human love, because humans are a species that separates. We travel, we explore, we leave our birth groups and join new ones. We spend time apart from the people we love, and yet the bonds persist. Not because we're in constant contact, but because we remember, because the relationship exists in our minds as well as in our current interactions, and all of this developed before language. Your ancestors were forming bonds that lasted across long separations millions of years before anyone could write letters or make phone calls or send messages. The bonds persisted through memory alone, through the expectation of reunion, through the mental representation of the relationship that remained active even when the other person wasn't present. This is why you can love someone you don't see often. Why distance doesn't necessarily weaken bonds if the foundation is strong enough. Why you can reunite with old friends and feel the connection immediately, even after years apart. Your brain is doing what it evolved to do millions of years ago, maintaining relationship representations across time, keeping bonds alive through memory, making love something that exists not just in the moment, but in the continuous mental model of who matters to you. Now let's look at one more pattern before we transition to our next section. Something that's particularly important for understanding human love. the capacity for love to create motivation for innovation. Picture a mother whose infant is sick, not injured, not in immediate danger from predators, but sick, feverish, weak, not eating. The mother can't fix this directly. She has no medical knowledge, no understanding of disease, but she's distressed. Her bonding system is activated. Her infant's suffering is her suffering. And this creates motivation. Motivation to try things, to experiment, to do something, anything that might help. So she tries. Carries the infant to water, sees if it will drink, finds different foods, sees if any interest the infant, moves to shady spots, sees if cooler temperature helps, stays more still than usual, sees if less movement reduces the infant's distress. Most of these attempts probably don't help, but sometimes by chance something works. The infant recovers, and the mother, without understanding why, without being able to explain the connection between her action and the outcome, remembers. The next time an infant is sick, she's more likely to try the thing that worked before. This is love-driving innovation, not conscious problem-solving, not scientific method, just the desperate motivation created by watching someone you're bonded to suffer, just trying things because doing nothing is unbearable, and occasionally by luck stumbling on something that actually helps. And then that innovation spreads. Other mothers watch, see what worked, try it when their infants are sick. The knowledge transfers through observation, through imitation, through culture that exists before anyone can explain what they're doing or why. You still do this. When someone you love is suffering and you can't fix it directly, you try things, different approaches, different solutions, different ways of helping. Not because you have a systematic plan, but because love creates motivation to act, to experiment, to keep trying even when you're not sure what will work. And sometimes you stumble on something that helps, and you remember, and you share what you learned with others, and human knowledge accumulates, driven in part by the desperate creativity that love activates when the people we care about need help we don't know how to give. Let's look now at how all of these patterns, adoption, cross-species care, alloparenting, altruism, long-term relationship memory, love-driven innovation, let's see how they all come together in a single group. Because they don't exist in isolation. They interact, amplify each other, create a social environment where love is more than just survival, where it's becoming something approaching what we'd recognize as human. Picture a group of your ancestors, maybe 2 million years ago. They're not quite human yet, not quite our species, but they're close, closer than anything else alive at that time. And watch how love works among them. Here's a mother with her infant, but she's not alone with it. Others help. Her older daughter carries the infant sometimes. Her male partner shares food with both of them. Her friend grooms the infant regularly. The infant is surrounded by care, by multiple individuals who've bonded with it, who respond to its needs, who invest in its survival, even though most of them aren't the biological mother. Here's an older female whose own offspring are grown. She's past reproductive age. In strict evolutionary terms, she's no longer contributing to the gene pool. But she's not useless. She's teaching younger females how to process certain foods. She's warning the group about dangers she's learnt to recognize over her long life. She's helping care for others' infants, particularly when mothers are sick or stressed. Her presence makes the group more successful even though she's not reproducing. Love has expanded beyond reproduction, has created value for individuals whose direct genetic contribution is finished, but whose knowledge and care still matter. Here's a young male who's not yet mated. He's formed a close friendship with another young male. They spend most of their time together, groom each other frequently, support each other in conflicts, watch each other's backs during dangerous activities. This friendship serves no immediate reproductive purpose. Neither of them has offspring yet. But the bond is real, deep, and it's teaching them both how to maintain long-term relationships, how to cooperate, how to trust, skills they'll use later when they do have families. The friendship is preparation, yes, but it's also valuable in itself, creating connection, creating meaning, creating a relationship that matters beyond its instrumental benefits. Here's an individual who's been injured, a fall maybe, or an attack. They can't keep up with the group. In many species, this would be a death sentence. The group would leave them behind. But this group slows down, waits. Others share food with the injured individual. They don't abandon them just because they're temporarily less functional. The bonds are strong enough to override immediate self-interest. The group accepts cost to keep this individual alive because the relationship matters more than efficiency. All of this is love. Different types, different intensities, different purposes, but all creating connections that hold the group together in ways that make them more than just a collection of individuals pursuing their own genetic interests. They're a community, a network of care, a web of bonds that create safety and support and knowledge transfer and innovation. And none of it requires words. None of it needs explanation or justification. It just is, just works, just creates the foundation on which everything human will eventually be built. As you're lying there tonight, perhaps you can feel how much of this is still in you. Your capacity to care for those who aren't genetically related to you, your willingness to help at cost to yourself, your ability to maintain bonds across distance and time, your creativity when trying to help someone you love, your trust of those who've demonstrated care for the group. All of this is ancient. All of it worked before language. All of it continues working now, in your life, creating the connections that make you more than just an individual pursuing survival. We're getting closer to humanity now, closer to the moment when language will emerge and change everything about how love can be expressed. But the foundation is already here. The neural systems, the hormones, the behavioral patterns, the capacity for bonds that go beyond survival, beyond reproduction, beyond rational calculation. Love that exists because bodies need each other, because nervous systems regulate each other, because evolution built systems so powerful they create connection even when connection is costly. In our next section, we'll look at what happens when these ancient systems encounter modern life. How wordless love shows up in a world full of words. How your body still speaks the old language even though your mind has learned new ones. How the foundations laid millions of years ago still shape every relationship you form. But for now, just rest. Let these images of ancient love settle into your awareness. Let your body remember what it's always known. You're built for connection, built to bond, built to love in ways that go beyond logic or language or conscious understanding. This isn't something you learned. It's something you are, something you've always been, something your ancestors were for millions of years before you were born. The story continues. The night is long, and love, that ancient inheritance, is just beginning to reveal itself in all its complexity. You've probably experienced this. You're trying to explain to someone why you love them, or why a relationship matters, or what someone means to you, and you can't find the right words. You stumble, you approximate, you say things like, "You just get me," or "I can't explain it," or "You know what I mean." And maybe you feel frustrated, like your inability to articulate what you're feeling means something is wrong with you, or unclear about the relationship, or insufficient in your capacity for expression. But here's what's actually happening. You're trying to use words to describe something that exists before words, that operates below words, that your body understands perfectly well even though your conscious mind struggles to explain it. You're trying to translate the wordless language your nervous system speaks into the worded language your culture demands. And sometimes the translation is impossible. Not because what you're feeling isn't real, but because words were never designed to capture it. Let's look at how this plays out in your modern life. How the ancient bonding systems we've been exploring, systems that evolved millions of years before language, how they show up now, how they shape your relationships, how they create connections your words can barely describe, and how understanding this might help you trust your wordless ways of loving, even when you can't articulate exactly what's happening. Think about the last time you felt instantly comfortable with someone. Maybe a new friend who somehow felt familiar immediately. Maybe a romantic partner who felt right from the first meeting. Maybe even a stranger who you just knew you could trust. You probably can't explain why, can't point to specific qualities or behaviours that justified your feeling. If someone asked you what made you trust them, you'd struggle to answer. You just knew, your body knew. Your nervous system recognised something. This is your ancient bonding systems doing their work. Reading signals that operate below conscious awareness, patterns of breathing, micro-expressions, body language, tone of voice, rhythm of speech. None of this is conscious, none of it is deliberate. But your nervous system, trained by millions of years of evolution, is constantly scanning for these signals, constantly assessing, is this person safe? Does their nervous system synchronize with mine? Do they respond to my emotional states in ways that create regulation? And when the signals align, when you meet someone whose patterns match yours in the right ways, your body knows before your mind does, creates an opening, a willingness to connect, a sense of rightness that has nothing to do with logical evaluation and everything to do with wordless recognition. You can't explain this in words because it's not happening in the language parts of your brain. It's happening deeper, in regions that existed before your species could speak, in systems that have been evaluating potential bonds for millions of years. Your words can describe the result. I felt comfortable with them immediately. But they can't capture the process, the complex symphony of signals and responses and synchronizations that created that feeling. And perhaps that's okay. Perhaps you don't need to explain it. Perhaps it's enough to know that your body speaks a language your words will never fully translate, and that this language is accurate, is trustworthy, has been keeping your ancestors alive and connected for longer than languages existed. Let's look at another scenario, another place where wordless love shows up in your modern life, often in ways you don't recognize. You're sitting next to someone you love, maybe watching television, maybe reading, maybe just existing in the same space. You're not talking, not doing anything together actively, just being near each other. And if someone asked you, what are you doing? You might say nothing or just relaxing. But something is happening, something important, something your body knows even if your mind dismisses it. Your nervous systems are regulating each other. This is happening automatically, below conscious awareness, through mechanisms that evolved millions of years ago. You're unconsciously matching breathing rhythms. Your heart rate variability is synchronizing. Your stress hormone levels are co-regulating. The presence of this person you're bonded to is literally changing your physiology in ways that promote well-being and reduce stress. Studies have measured this, put sensors on people who love each other and have them just sit near each other without talking. Watch their physiological patterns converge. Heart rates synchronize, breathing deepens and matches. Cortisol levels drop in both individuals. This isn't placebo effect. This isn't imagination. This is bodies doing what they evolved to do, using proximity to bonded individuals for mutual regulation. But you probably don't think about it this way. Probably don't recognize that doing nothing together is actually doing something crucial. Something your ancestors did for millions of years before anyone invented television or books or phones. They sat together, groomed each other, maintained proximity, and their bodies regulated each other through that proximity, created the calm and safety that made sleep possible, made rest effective, made stress manageable. You're doing the same thing. When you choose to be near someone even though you're not actively interacting, when you feel better in their presence even though nothing is happening, when their company is restorative even when you're not talking, this isn't laziness, this isn't wasting time, this is wordless love working. This is your nervous system using proximity to a bonded individual the way it was designed to, for regulation, for restoration, for the creation of safety through presence alone. And maybe, knowing this, you can value these quiet moments more, can recognize them as love expressed in its most ancient form. Not words, not grand gestures, just being there, just allowing your bodies to do what they've been doing for millions of years, just trusting that proximity matters even when it doesn't feel like you're accomplishing anything. Now let's look at something that causes a lot of confusion and pain in modern relationships. The disconnect between what we say and what our bodies do, between the promises we make and the bonds we actually form. You can say I love you to someone, can mean it sincerely, can want it to be true, but your nervous system knows whether this person actually calms you or activates you, knows whether their presence regulates you or dysregulates you, knows whether the bond is built on the kind of mutual care and proximity and attention that creates secure attachment, or whether it's built on words and hopes and good intentions that aren't supported by the wordless language your body actually responds to. This is why some relationships that look perfect on paper feel wrong in practice. Why you can be with someone who checks all the boxes, who says all the right things, who you should love, but something doesn't click. Your conscious mind is evaluating based on words and logic and cultural expectations, but your nervous system is evaluating based on millions of years of bonding criteria. And when the two don't align, when words say yes but your body says no, the disconnect creates confusion. Your friends might ask, "What's wrong with them?" And you can't answer. Because nothing is wrong exactly. They're kind, attractive, successful, available, all the things you thought you wanted. But your nervous system isn't bonding, isn't creating the synchronization and regulation and rightness that real attachment requires, and you can't force it, can't talk yourself into it. Because the bonding systems operate below the level of conscious control, this is one of the hardest truths about love. You can't create it through effort alone, can't manufacture it through good intentions or logical reasoning or sheer will. The wordless bonding systems either activate or they don't. Either your nervous systems synchronize or they don't. Either the presence creates regulation or it doesn't. And words, no matter how sincere, can't override what your body knows. This isn't cruel, it's protective. Your bonding systems are doing what they evolved to do, selecting for relationships that will actually provide the regulation and support and safety that kept your ancestors alive. They are not being picky for arbitrary reasons. They are being selective because survival depended on choosing the right bonds, on distinguishing between people who said the right things and people who actually showed up in the wordless ways that mattered. And perhaps understanding this, you can trust your body more, can stop trying to force bonds that aren't forming, can stop judging yourself for not loving someone you think you should love, can recognize that the wordless evaluation your nervous system is doing has value, has accuracy, has millions of years of evolutionary wisdom behind it. Let's look now at the flip side, at relationships where the wordless bond is strong but the words are difficult, where your body knows you're connected but your conscious mind struggles to express it. Maybe you have a parent you love but don't know how to talk to. Conversations are awkward. You can't find words for what you feel. Attempts to say I love you feel stilted or uncomfortable. But when they're sick, you show up. When they need help, you're there. When they're old and declining, you stay. Your actions demonstrate what your words can't express. This is wordless love working perfectly. Your body knows this bond matters, knows this person is part of your safety network, your regulation system, your attachment web, and it responds accordingly. Shows up, stays, provides care. Your conscious mind might be frustrated by the lack of verbal connection, might wish you could have deep conversations or express feelings articulately, but your body doesn't need words. It's speaking the old language, the language of presence and action and staying close when it would be easier to leave. And that's enough. That's what love looked like for millions of years before anyone could say I love you. Actions, proximity, reliability, the willingness to show up. This isn't inferior to verbal expressions of love. It's the foundation. It's what words were invented to describe but can never fully replace. Or maybe you're in a romantic relationship where the sex is amazing, but the conversation is hard. Where your bodies synchronize perfectly but your words feel clumsy. Where physical intimacy creates profound connection, but verbal intimacy remains elusive. Culture tells you this isn't enough, that real love requires being able to talk about everything, share everything, verbally connect at the deepest level. But your body disagrees. Your body knows that sexual intimacy is one of the oldest forms of bonding, that the synchronization of arousal and pleasure and release creates neurochemical bonds as strong as any created through conversation. That physical connection, when it's good, activates the same oxytocin and endorphin systems that create mother-infant bonds, that maintain pair bonds, that built human attachment for millions of years before anyone could talk about their feelings. This doesn't mean words don't matter. They do. Verbal communication adds layers of connection that purely physical bonds can't access. But it does mean that physical connection without extensive verbal communication isn't deficient, isn't less real, isn't less valid. It's just love speaking a different language, an older language, a language your body fluent in even if your conscious mind wants more words. Now let's look at something that causes enormous anxiety in modern relationships. The fear that if you can't articulate why you love someone, the love must not be real, or deep, or valid. The belief that true love should be explainable, definable, describable in words. But think about what you're actually asking. You're asking your conscious verbal mind to explain something that's happening in pre-verbal brain regions. You're asking language to capture something that evolved millions of years before language existed. You're asking words to translate sensations and synchronizations and neural activations that were never designed to be verbal. It's like asking someone to describe a color to someone who's never seen, or to explain music to someone who's never heard. The experience exists, it's real, it's profound, but words are inadequate tools for capturing it. Not because the experience is vague or unclear, because it's deeper than language can reach. When you say, "I can't explain why I love you," I just do. You're not failing to understand your own feelings. You're accurately recognizing that what you feel operates at a level where words don't apply. Your nervous system has bonded. Your attachment systems have activated. Your body has learned to need this person's presence for regulation and safety and well-being. All of this is happening. All of this is real. But it's not happening in language, so language can't fully capture it. And that's okay. That's not a problem to solve. That's just the reality of being a creature that evolved wordless bonding systems millions of years before developing the capacity for speech. Your body speaks a language your words will never fully translate, and that doesn't make the body's language less valid, less real, less true. Let's look at another modern scenario where wordless love shows up, often unrecognized. You're going through something difficult. A loss maybe, a failure, a betrayal, something that hurts in ways you can't quite articulate. And someone you love just sits with you, doesn't try to fix it, doesn't offer advice or platitude or solutions, just stays, just is present, just allows you to feel what you're feeling while they remain nearby. You might minimize this later, might say they didn't really do anything, or they just sat there. But your body knows better, knows that their presence changed your physiological response to the pain, that your stress hormones modulated differently with them there than they would have if you'd been alone, that your nervous system used their proximity to regulate, to prevent complete overwhelm, to maintain some baseline of stability while you process difficult emotions. This is wordless love doing exactly what it evolved to do, providing regulation through presence, offering safety through proximity, creating the conditions for emotional processing through simple co-presence. Your friend or partner didn't need to say the right thing, didn't need to have answers, didn't need to fix anything. They just needed to stay, to be there, to offer their nervous system as a regulator for yours while you went through something hard. And this is often more valuable than any words could be, because words can be wrong, can minimize, can misunderstand, but presence is always right. Presence says, "You're not alone in this. Your distress matters enough to me that I'll stay even though I can't fix it. This bond is strong enough that I can tolerate being with your pain even though it's uncomfortable for me too." This is love in its purest form. Not trying to change you, not trying to make you feel better through words or logic or distraction, just being there, just staying, just offering the kind of regulation through proximity that your ancestors relied on for millions of years before anyone could say, "I'm here for you." Now, let's look at something particularly painful in modern life. The way we judge ourselves and others for having attachment needs that feel childish or needy, or excessive. You want your partner to text you regularly, not because you distrust them, but because contact makes you feel connected. You want to see your friends regularly, not because you're controlling, but because proximity matters to your nervous system. You feel anxious when someone important to you is distant or unavailable, not because you're insecure, but because your attachment systems are doing what they evolved to do, monitoring the status of crucial bonds and alerting you when those bonds feel threatened. Culture tells you to be independent, self-sufficient, able to function perfectly well without constant contact or reassurance. To need these things is weakness, neediness, lack of maturity. You should be able to go days or weeks without contact and feel fine, should be able to tolerate uncertainty about relationships without distress, should be secure enough not to need regular confirmation that your bonds are intact. But your nervous system doesn't care what culture says. It's running ancient software designed for a world where separation from bonded individuals was dangerous, where lack of contact meant something might be wrong, where uncertainty about relationship status needed to be resolved quickly because survival depended on knowing who you could count on. Your attachment needs aren't childish. They're human. They're the natural result of having bonding systems that evolved over millions of years. And they don't go away just because modern life makes them inconvenient. Your body still needs what it's always needed: regular contact with bonded individuals, reassurance that important relationships are stable, the ability to use proximity to others for regulation and safety. This doesn't mean you can't develop capacity to tolerate separation. You can. Secure attachment is partly about learning that bonds persist even when the other person isn't present. But developing that capacity doesn't eliminate the underlying need for connection, doesn't make you less human for wanting contact, doesn't mean you're broken if you feel better when you hear from people you love. Your attachment needs are valid. They're ancient. They're universal. Every human who's ever lived has had them, though they might have expressed them differently. And understanding where these needs come from, understanding that they're not weakness but inheritance, might help you be gentler with yourself when you feel them, might help you communicate them to others without shame, might help you recognize that wanting connection is what bodies do, what they have always done, what they'll always do. Let's look at one more modern scenario before we move to our final section. Something about how wordless love shows up in grief. Someone you love has died, and people want to help. They send cards, they say, "I'm sorry for your loss, and let me know if you need anything," and they're in a better place now. Words. So many words. All of them meaning well. None of them helping much. But then someone shows up, brings food, does dishes, sits quietly, doesn't try to make it better with words, just handles practical things, just stays present, just allows you to grieve while they maintain some baseline of order in the physical world around you. This is wordless love responding to wordless grief. Because grief, like love, operates below language. It's your attachment system trying to process an unresolvable problem. A crucial bond has been severed, and your body can't fix it. Your nervous system is registering the absence the way it would register a physical injury. Stress hormones flooding, sleep disrupted, appetite gone, the entire system dysregulated because someone who helped regulate you is gone. Words can't fix this. There's nothing to say that makes the pain stop, but presence helps. Action helps. Someone maintaining proximity while your system struggles to recalibrate. Someone offering the wordless regulation that their presence provides. Someone demonstrating through action what words can't express. I see your pain, I can't take it away, but you're not alone in it. This is love doing what it's always done, showing up, staying, offering presence and practical care when nothing else helps. Your ancestors grieved without words to describe their grief, without therapy or support groups or sympathy cards, just the presence of others who stayed nearby, who touched them, who maintained the group bonds even when one member was missing, who helped each other's nervous system survive the dysregulation of profound loss. And this still works, still helps, still matters. Not because it fixes anything, because it demonstrates that even in loss you're not alone. Even in grief, the web of connections remains. Even when one bond is severed, others stay intact. This is what your body needs in grief. Not words, not explanations, not attempts to make it better. Just the steady, wordless presence of others who won't leave just because you're broken. As you're lying there tonight, perhaps you can feel it. How much of your love life operates in this wordless space? How many of your most important connections are built on things you can't fully articulate? How much of what matters happens in the language your body speaks, the language that evolved millions of years before anyone could say, "I love you"? This isn't a problem. This isn't something to overcome or improve or make more verbal. This is your inheritance. This is love working the way it's worked for millions of years, through presence, through action, through nervous systems synchronizing and regulating each other, through bonds that exist in the body before they exist in the mind. Words add something, certainly. They create layers of connection that wordless bonds can't access. But they're not the foundation. The foundation is older, deeper, more reliable than any words will ever be. And trusting that foundation, trusting your wordless ways of loving, that might be one of the most important things you can do for your relationships and for yourself. In our final section, we'll look at what all of this means. How understanding wordless love changes how you think about connection. How it might help you trust your body more and your words less. How it might allow you to recognize love where it exists, even when it can't be named. But for now, just rest. Let your breathing deepen. Let your body remember what it's always known. Love is what you do, not what you say. Love is presence, not promises. Love is the ancient language your body speaks perfectly, even when your words fail. The night deepens, the story continues. And love, that wordless inheritance, still holds you, still connects you, still speaks through you in ways older than words will ever be. Here's the part of the story that's often missing, the part we haven't talked about yet. Because we've spent hours now exploring how love worked before language, how it evolved, how it shows up in modern life, how it operates in the wordless spaces your conscious mind can barely reach. But we haven't talked about why this matters, what this knowledge gives you, how understanding your wordless capacity for love might actually change how you live and connect and trust yourself. So let's talk about the gifts. The surprising, paradoxical ways that understanding wordless love makes your life richer, makes your connections deeper, makes you more capable and more trusting of what your body knows. Let's start with authenticity, with the gift of knowing when love is real. In a world full of words, where people can say anything, where declarations and promises and statements of feeling are cheap and common and often unreliable, your wordless bonding systems are doing something crucial. They're evaluating, they're assessing, they're determining whether someone's actions match their words, whether their presence actually creates the regulation and safety and synchronization that real bonds provide. You can't fake this. You can say you love someone without loving them, can make promises without meaning them, can perform the words of connection without feeling connected. But you can't fake nervous system synchronization, can't fake the way your body responds to someone's presence, can't fake the regulation that happens when real attachment exists. Your body knows when someone's words match their actions, knows when proximity actually creates calm or just creates performance of calm, knows when bonds are built on the kind of consistent presence and care and attention that your bonding systems recognize as real, or when they're built on words and hopes and good intentions that your nervous system doesn't trust. This is a gift, because it means you have an internal compass for authenticity, a way of knowing what's real that doesn't depend on what people say or what they promise, or how good they are at verbal expression. Your body is constantly evaluating, does this person's presence actually help me, or do they show up when it matters? Do our nervous systems actually synchronize? Is this bond built on the foundations that kept your ancestors alive for millions of years, or is it built on something more fragile? And when you learn to trust this evaluation, when you stop overriding what your body knows because your mind wants to believe different words, you protect yourself. Protect yourself from relationships that look good on paper but feel wrong in practice. Protect yourself from people who say the right things but don't do them. Protect yourself from bonds that words promise but bodies don't deliver. This doesn't mean words don't matter. They do. But it means that when words and body knowledge conflict, when someone says they love you, but their actions don't create the regulation and safety and presence that love requires, your body's assessment is more trustworthy than their words. And learning to honor that, learning to trust your wordless knowing, that's a profound gift. Now let's talk about another gift, the ability to love across differences that words might make insurmountable. Think about how much conflict happens over words, over different ways of expressing feelings, over different communication styles, over verbal misunderstandings and misinterpretations and failures to articulate what you mean in ways the other person can understand. So much energy spent trying to get the words right, to find the perfect phrase, to explain yourself in ways that will be heard and understood and accepted. But wordless love doesn't require this. Doesn't need you to find the right words or communicate in the other person's preferred style or overcome verbal barriers to connection. It just needs presence, needs action, needs the willingness to show up and stay and care in ways the body recognizes even when words fail. This means you can love people you're terrible at talking to, can bond with people whose verbal communication style doesn't match yours, can form deep connections with people you'll never have perfect conversations with. Because the connection isn't built on words, it's built on the things bodies understand: proximity, attention, reliability, care expressed through action. This is liberating, because it means love isn't limited by your verbal skills, isn't dependent on finding someone who communicates exactly like you do, isn't restricted to relationships where every feeling can be perfectly articulated and every need can be clearly expressed. Love can exist in the wordless spaces, can thrive there even, can be just as real, just as deep, just as sustaining as love that's built on endless conversations. And perhaps this allows you to value relationships you might have dismissed because the verbal connection wasn't perfect. Allows you to recognize love where it exists, even when it can't be eloquently described. Allows you to honor the ways people show care through action, even when their words are clumsy or absent. Let's talk now about the gift of trusting your body's timeline for bonding. Modern culture wants love to be efficient, wants you to know quickly whether someone is right for you, wants clear verbal communication of intentions and feelings, wants you to be able to articulate after a few dates whether this relationship has potential, to define it, to give it a label, to move through prescribed stages at prescribed speeds. But your bonding systems don't work this way. They work on their own timeline, a timeline determined by millions of years of evolution, not by cultural expectations or dating norms. Secure attachment takes time to build, takes repeated interactions, takes your nervous system learning that this person is reliably available, consistently responsive, trustworthy in their presence and care. This can't be rushed. Can't be forced through good intentions or perfect communication or sheer effort. Your body needs what it needs: time to evaluate, time to synchronize, time to learn whether this person's presence actually creates the regulation that real bonds require. And pushing for verbal commitment before your body is ready, before the wordless bonding systems have done their work, that creates relationships built on words without the foundation of body trust. Understanding this gives you permission to move at your body's pace, to not rush attachment just because culture expects it, to trust that slow bonding isn't failure or disinterest or lack of potential. It's your ancient systems doing their due diligence, evaluating, assessing, making sure this bond is built on the foundations that will sustain it. And this might mean disappointing people who want faster verbal declarations, might mean frustrating partners who want commitment before your body is ready to give it. But it also means building bonds that last. Building relationships on the foundations your nervous system trusts. Building love that's real in the ways that matter most, even if it takes longer to name. Now let's talk about the gift of recognizing love in unexpected places. When you understand that love is fundamentally wordless, that it's about what bodies do rather than what minds say, you start noticing it where you might have missed it before. The coworker who remembers you don't like crowds and creates space for you at events. The friend who shows up when you're moving apartments even though you didn't ask. The neighbour who clears snow from your walkway without mentioning it. The family member who checks on you during hard times without making a big deal about it. None of this comes with declarations. None of it is labelled as love. But it is love. It's care expressed through action. It's attention paid to your needs. It's the willingness to invest time and energy in your well-being. It's love speaking the old language. The language of presence and practical help and staying aware of what matters to you. And recognizing this, valuing this, allowing yourself to feel the love in these wordless actions that enriches your life. Because suddenly you're not waiting for people to say I love you before you feel loved. You're noticing all the ways people demonstrate care through what they do. You're seeing the web of wordless connection that actually surrounds you, even if it's rarely named. This doesn't diminish verbal expressions of love, but it does mean you're not dependent on them. Not waiting for words before you allow yourself to feel held and cared for and connected. You're recognizing love where it actually exists. In the actions people take, in the time they spend, in the ways they show up. Let's talk about another gift. The capacity to love without needing to understand why. When love is primarily verbal, when it's built on conversations and shared interests and intellectual connection, there's pressure to explain it. To know why you love someone, to articulate what draws you to them, to have reasons that make sense to others and to yourself. But wordless love doesn't require this. Your nervous system can bond with someone for reasons that never become conscious. Can create attachment based on synchronizations and regulations and patterns that operate below the level of awareness. You might not know why you trust someone, might not be able to explain why their presence calms you, might not understand what makes you feel safe with them, but the bond is real regardless. This is freeing, because it means you don't need to justify your attachments, don't need to have explanations that satisfy others or make logical sense, don't need to understand the full mechanism of why you love in order to honor that you do. Your body knows. That's enough. The bond exists. That's what more matters. And this might help you trust connections that don't make sense on paper, might allow you to honor feelings that you can't fully articulate, might give you permission to love in ways that you can't defend or explain or rationalize, but that your body recognizes as real and important and worth maintaining. Now, let's talk about something more difficult. The gift that comes from understanding that not all love lasts, and that's okay. When love is built primarily on words, on promises and commitments and statements of forever, its dissolution feels like betrayal, like failure, like someone broke something they said they wouldn't break. And there's enormous pain in that. The sense that words were lies, that promises were empty, that love itself was false. But when you understand love as fundamentally wordless, as something bodies do in response to circumstances and synchronizations and needs, you can see endings differently. Sometimes nervous systems that synchronize stop synchronizing. Sometimes people who regulated each other stop being able to do that. Sometimes bonds that served crucial purposes at one time stop serving those purposes, and the love doesn't become retroactively false. It was real when it worked. It's just no longer working. This doesn't eliminate the pain of endings. Grief is still grief. Loss is still loss. Your attachment systems don't care why a bond ended. They just register that someone who mattered is gone, and that activates all the old alarm systems about separation being dangerous. But it might reduce the additional layer of pain that comes from feeling betrayed or lied to. Because if the love was always fundamentally about what your bodies did together, about the regulation and synchronization and mutual care that existed, then its ending doesn't mean the words were false. It just means the circumstances changed. The synchronization stopped working. The bond stopped providing what it once provided. And sometimes, understanding this allows relationships to end with more grace, with recognition that love existed and mattered and was real, and also that it served its purpose and it's the time to let it transform into something else. Not all bonds last forever. Most don't. But that doesn't make them less valuable for the time they existed. Doesn't make them less real. Doesn't mean they failed. They just ran their natural course, like everything in nature does. Let's talk now about some practical ways to honour your wordless capacity for love. Not therapy, not techniques. Just simple practices for trusting what your body knows. First, pay attention to how your body responds to people. Not what you think about them, not what they say or what they promise or what you wish you felt, but what actually happens in your body when they're present. Does your breathing deepen? Does your shoulders relax? Does your nervous system calm? Or do you get slightly tense? Do you hold your breath? Do you feel like you need to perform or manage or carefully control yourself? Neither response is wrong, but they're information. Information about whether this person's presence actually creates the regulation your bonding systems are looking for. And that information is valuable. More valuable often than what your conscious mind thinks you should feel or what the other person's words promise. Second, trust. Slow bonding. If your body is taking time to trust someone, let it. Don't rush. Don't override your hesitation just because your mind has decided this person is good or right or appropriate. Your bonding systems are evaluating on a different timeline, using different criteria, assessing things your conscious mind can't see. Give them time to do their work. Secure attachment is built through repeated experiences of someone being reliably available and responsive. Your body needs evidence. Let it gather that evidence at its own pace. Third, value presence over words. Notice who shows up, who stays, who takes action to care for you even when it's inconvenient, who maintains proximity even when you're difficult or struggling, or not particularly pleasant to be around. These people are speaking the old language, the language your body actually trusts. Let yourself feel the love in these actions, even if the words are absent or clumsy. Fourth, communicate your attachment needs without shame. You need regular contact with people you're bonded to. Need reassurance sometimes that relationships are stable. Need presence when you're struggling. These aren't childish needs. They're human needs. They're what your nervous system requires to feel safe in relationships. And you can ask for these things directly. You can say, I need to hear from you regularly, or I need you to be present when I'm going through hard things, or I need to know this relationship is stable. These are reasonable requests. They're asking for what your body actually needs to maintain secure attachment. Fifth, practice being present for others. Not fixing, not solving, not having the right words. Just staying. Just being there. Just offering your proximity and attention and willingness to sit with whatever they're feeling. This is love in its purest form. This is what your ancestors did for millions of years. This is what your body knows how to do, even when your words fail. Sixth, forgive yourself for bonds that don't form. Sometimes you meet someone who should be perfect, who checks all the boxes, who you want to bond with. But your nervous system doesn't cooperate, doesn't create the synchronization, doesn't feel the rightness. This isn't failure. This isn't being too picky or too damaged or too difficult. This is your bonding systems doing their job, evaluating potential relationships using criteria that have kept your lineage alive for millions of years. Trust their assessment. Let bonds form where they want to form. Stop trying to force connections your body isn't creating. Seventh, recognize that you're always speaking the wordless language. Every time you choose to be near someone, every time you offer care through action, every time you stay present when someone is struggling, every time you show up, you're speaking love in the language your body knows best. The language that existed before words, the language that will outlast any promises, the language that is most true. As you're lying there tonight, in the deepening darkness, perhaps you can feel it. The ancient capacity for wordless love that's built into every cell. The knowledge your body carries about how to bond, how to care, how to connect, in ways that go deeper than any words can reach. This isn't something you need to learn. You already know it. Your nervous system has been speaking this language since before you were born, since before your species could speak at all, since the first mammals held their young close and felt their own distress at their offspring's distress, since the first primates groomed each other and felt calm in the touch, since the first humans stayed close in the darkness and regulated each other through proximity alone. You carry all of this. Carry it in your body, in your nervous system, in the way you respond to others' presence and absence, in the way you feel safer when bonded individuals are near, in the way you want to stay close to people you love, in the way you're moved to care for others even when it's costly, in the way you grieve when bonds are severed, in the way you recognize love through action more than through words. This is your inheritance, this capacity for wordless love, and it's not less than verbal love. Not inferior, not primitive, it's the foundation. It's what words were invented to describe but can never fully capture. It's what makes you human in the deeper sense. Connected, bonded, unable to survive alone, built for relationships that operate in spaces words can't reach. And perhaps, knowing this, you can trust yourself more. Trust your body's wisdom about who to bond with and who not to. Trust the timeline your nervous system needs to create secure attachment. Trust that love expressed through presence and action is just as real as love expressed through words. Trust that your wordless ways of loving are valid and valuable and enough. You don't need perfect words to love well. Don't need to be eloquent or articulate or gifted at expression. You just need to show up, to stay, to be present, to allow your body to do what it knows how to do: bond, care, regulate, connect. The rest is just description. Important, yes, but not the thing itself, for the thing itself is wordless, always has been, always will be. Your ancestors loved for millions of years without saying "I love you," without writing love letters or making promises, or articulating their feelings. They just stayed close, just cared for each other, just allowed their nervous systems to synchronize and regulate and create the bonds that kept them alive. And that was enough. More than enough. It built families, built communities, built the entire foundation of human connection. You're part of that lineage. You speak that language. Even now, even here, in your modern life full of words and texts and verbal declarations, your body is still doing what it's always done. Still creating bonds through presence, still evaluating relationships through regulation, still knowing love through the wordless language that predates speech by millions of years. This is not a burden, not a limitation, not something to overcome or improve or make more verbal. This is a gift. The gift of knowing at a level deeper than words what connection actually is, what it requires, what it feels like when it's real. So rest now. Let your breathing deepen. Let your body settle into the darkness. You're held by the same forces that held your ancestors through millions of years. The capacity for wordless love, the ability to bond through presence, the knowledge that you're built for connection, that isolation is dangerous, that proximity to bonded individuals is what safety feels like. The words can rest tonight. They've done their work trying to describe what words can never fully capture. But the thing itself, the wordless love, it's still here. Still operating, still holding you, still connecting you to everyone you've bonded with, everyone who matters, everyone whose presence your body recognizes as essential. You don't need to understand it all. Don't need to articulate it or explain it or make it make sense. You just need to feel it. Feel the truth that your body knows. You're built for love, built to connect, built to bond in ways that go deeper than language, built to need others and be needed by them, built to find safety in proximity and distress in isolation, built to speak the old language that your ancestors spoke for millions of years before anyone could say "I love you." And that's enough for tonight. That's everything. The wordless knowledge, the body's wisdom, the ancient capacity for love that doesn't need words to be real. The people you love, they're out there somewhere. Maybe sleeping, maybe awake, maybe thinking of you, maybe not, but the bonds exist regardless, exist in your nervous system, in your body's recognition of their presence as essential, in the way you're wired to need them and they're wired to need you. Words or no words, distance or proximity, the bonds are real. And you, lying there in the darkness, you're part of the oldest story. The story of creatures who survived because they learned to love, who bonded deeply enough to care for helpless young, who stayed together despite hardship, who regulated each other through proximity, who created safety through connection, who built the web of relationships that made everything else possible. You come from that. You are that. Your body knows how to do what they did, knows how to love without needing permission from words, knows how to bond through presence, knows how to trust the connections that your nervous system creates even when your conscious mind doesn't understand why. So sleep now. Rest in the knowledge that love is older than language, that you speak it fluently even when you can't find words, that your capacity for wordless connection is not a limitation but a profound inheritance, that you're held by forces older than speech, deeper than thought, more reliable than any promise words could make. The night is gentle, the darkness is safe, the bonds that hold you are ancient and strong and built on millions of years of bodies learning to need each other. That's enough. That's everything. Your ancestors would be proud. They loved without words for millions of years, and you carry their capacity forward. You love the way they loved, through presence, through action, through staying, through the wordless language that bodies speak when they need each other. And that language, that ancient way of loving, it's still speaking, still connecting, still creating the bonds that make life bearable and beautiful and worth living. Words or no words, language or no language, love remains, love endures. Love exists in the space before words and will exist after words are gone. Good night.